Hello, I'm going to demonstrate a quick overview of the Lenovo Thinkpad Helix in relation to using it as an art tool. You can see my full review posted below. The Helix is an ultrabook laptop/tablet hybrid. The review unit I received comes with an Intel Core i5, 4GB of RAM, 1080p display, 128GB hard drive, and Windows 8 Pro 64-bit. Here you can see the rear-facing 5-megapixel camera, and upon opening you can see the 2-megapixel front-facing camera, 11.6-inch display as mentioned. On the back of the unit you have two USB 3.0 ports, a display port out, and the power adapter plug. The top you'll find the power switch and the volume rockers, which I had mixed feelings about actually. They were a little flush and hard to press, but at the same time I kind of liked it because you wouldn't have to worry about it getting pressed and accidentally turning on your device in a bag or a laptop bag or something. So, what makes the Helix special is what Lenovo calls rip and flip. You push this little button here and the tablet pops out. Underneath you have some general connectors, a power connector again, and a USB 2.0 port, which I wasn't very happy about. I'm not sure why they didn't just continue USB 3, so if you want to just use the tablet by itself, you're kind of limited in speed if you want to use an external hard drive or something like that. And the fact that it doesn't have any expandable memory kind of makes that even worse. They do offer, I believe, another model with the Core i7 and options for a larger hard drive, but it's going to cost you. So, if you turn it back here, you flip it and pop it in, plus the rip and flip, and you get what they call stand mode, which is, is for general presentation and video viewing. But I would have liked if there was some kind of lock on the hinge so you could have used it sort of like as an easel, but a little bit of pressure and the device starts to fold flat. But that also brings us to its next mode, which is Tablet Plus mode. In this mode you get, due to the fans inside the base here, you get additional cooling so the processor runs a little faster. And of course, since there's a battery inside the keyboard, you get almost double the battery life. Now onto using it. I'm going to be using the Matias iRiser for the iPad. It's a stand I bought to use with my Surface Pro. It's really good, and if you're an artist and need to have your tablet in any angle you'd like, it's a great buy. It costs about $15 plus shipping. So, first we'll fire up Photoshop. As you can see, it starts up very quickly. Now, what's nice is that they include a stylus, and it's right here. It slides into the back, which I neglected to show. And but the problem with the stylus, it's very small. If you can see in relation to my hands, I mean, granted, I have some decent sized hands, but it's just won't do. For quick, signing a name or something like that, which is probably its first intended use, it's fine. But after a while, you're just going to get very cramped if you have medium to large hands. If you have small hands, you might be fine. So for the purpose of this review, I'm going to use the Wacom Bamboo Feel, much more substantial pen. I bought it to use with my Surface Pro. And so we will start up a new document. So It works fairly well. This pressure sensitivity works great. Although when I first used it, it was definitely too sensitive. I had to ratchet up the settings to be a lot more firmer than what it comes with, because I couldn't barely do any strokes. So it works very well, but my biggest problem, and if you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit. If you're on this side of the screen, the left side of the screen, the cursor lines up pretty decently, it's fine. But as you move to the other side of the screen, depending on the angle you have the pen, it can go out of calibration a little bit or a lot of it. And sometimes it's inconsistent, which is a little strange, but for the most part, it has been off on this side, especially at the smaller brush sizes for some reason. At larger brush sizes, it seems to be a little bit more forgiving, but so far my experience with it has just been mixed. And it's still a little sensitive, but not much more so than my Surface. But compared to, say, my Cintiq, it definitely, the range of sensitivity kind of jumps from light to full a lot faster than one of those devices. The other thing I should point out is that I did try to recalibrate this several times, and all I got was the same thing or worse. So that was a bit of a problem, and I'm hoping that a driver patch or something can be released to fix it. It is Wacom's driver that is being used for this, so it really doesn't fall on Lenovo. But it's strange how I didn't have the same problem on the Surface Pro as I am having on the Helix. So I'm not sure what exactly the problem is here for that. Next, I'll show a few quick monitor tests I did with my trusty Surface Pro to compare. I'm not sure how this will show through on video, so you have to take some of this with a grain of salt and just kind of take my word for it, I guess. I'm using the Passmark monitor test software, so I'm going to run that now. Now, the one thing I noticed was that the colors on the Surface Pro were very close and accurate to my work IPS monitor. Fortunately, I can't compare three on screen because I don't have the room to show, but my Surface Pro matches that pretty well out of the box. I never had to bother calibrating it, and it worked pretty well, so I left it as is. Whereas the Helix, while the colors are good, definitely showed a little bit more of a yellow tinge in the whites, and the blues were a bit off. Not to say that it probably could be fixed through calibration, but out of the box, it's not quite as accurate. And the colors on the Helix they worked well. It's just you can see on video, for some strange reason, you can see it flickering, whereas in the Surface Pro, you don't, which I'm not too sure of the reason for that. But I'll cycle through a few of these. Well, the blacks on the Helix are pretty good, as well as the Surface Pro. The Surface Pro has a slightish bluish to the blacks, but not very noticeable. It's fairly accurate. The Helixes are actually a little more black. I did notice some edge light bleed, but it wasn't too noticeable. It's mostly around the menus. So then with that, I'll the next mode. The reds were pretty good on both. Though the green is definitely where I don't know if this comes through on video, but it is more of a neon green compared to the green displayed on the Surface. And again, my Surface is matching my calibrated IPS monitor so the Helix is off, but may just need to be calibrated. On gradients, it did very well, although I did notice a little bit of banding, whereas it was a smooth gradation on the Surface Pro. So again, not as bad, but still just kind of shows you that the screen here works better than this screen, unfortunately. Let's see, they both do well with the moire pattern test, but you do see a little bit more of an effect going on in the Helix than you do on the Surface Pro. So, but overall, not too bad. And sharpness tests also show that they both perform very well, and the Helix actually performed a little bit better in terms of sharpness, but not by much, hardly noticeable. It's mostly when you have scaling on the Surface Pro, which you need, otherwise things get too small, and the Helix doesn't have to do that since it has a much larger screen. So that's what you see, the sharpness looks better there. The response time on the Surface Pro was a little bit behind on the Helix, so the Helix did have a little bit of a better response time, which would be good if you're playing games. My next test was to perform how well the Helix would do color-wise on a piece that I already worked on, something I was familiar with. So here we see side by side on the Helix and the Surface Pro. Since the Surface Pro, as I mentioned, is more closely tuned to my work monitor, you can, if you can see it in the video, you can see the difference. On the Helix, it's definitely has a more orange cast, or orangey yellow cast to it, which is a bit inaccurate. The tone of the piece is kind of that direction, but it's not as saturated as the Helix is showing it. The Surface Pro is looking much, much better, and you can see definitely around this area and that area that it's definitely off. I don't know how well it comes through on video, but trust me, it's off. Well, that's about all for the video portion, this quick overview. For all the details and all my thoughts and opinions on the device, please see the full review below. If this on YouTube, there will be a link below in the comments. And thanks for watching.